local, which can be square, round, manual, automated, doesn't matter. What matters is vertical versus horizontal. And we favor the vertical system for several reasons because of its physical shape. The first advantage is that when you load the press, your fruits don't fall from high and you can see all of them. When you load a dark cylinder, you don't see many things. Then here your fruits cover a relatively large area compared to a narrow cylinder, so you are getting a better self-filtration of the juice through the fruit before it pours out of the press. And three, we have also an advantage when we have to fork over the fruits. You know that when you press and arrange by hand, if you do this, you have a part of the juice. You have to do that to get everything. We have more or less the same problem. We load the press, we begin to press, and when we have obtained maybe half the juice available, our press becomes physically blocked and we can't extract anymore. So what you do with the vertical one, that you will put your press up, you take a fork, we take the fruits which are on the side, and you put them back in the middle. In fact, you make a smaller cake, and you give it space to expand. In an horizontal press, you have the same problem, but of course a different solution, because you can't access to the fruits. So the only way to do it is either to unscrew or deflate the press, turn it in the wrong side, and break everything in it. And that's the difference. Here you go gently a small amount of fruits into the system, you make a mess with everything. Even if the pneumatic is much better because you don't deflate it completely, so the fruits are still pretty well maintained. But this is a bit better, especially also because those presses which look very old, because they are also much more modern than what they look, because they received 12 years ago now a brand new hydraulic system, computer control, which is as smart and precise as the most modern pneumatic. The idea is that it can regulate very precisely the speed at which the pressure builds. And the more regular that speed, the more regular the speed at which the juice are flowing. And the more regular the speed the juice are flowing, the further you can go in the pressing before being obliged to fork over. In fact, we have always in mind to try to diminish the movement of the fruit. I say sometimes that in an ideal world we take each berry and do that. Too expensive, we group them, but we try to be as close as possible of that concept. The pressing is also a very strictly regulated process. In fact, when the fruits arrive, we weigh them, we group them by unit of 4,000 kilo, either per vineyard, grape variety, village, grower, depending on the speed at which the fruits arrive. This represents the capacity of the press, and from those 4,000 kilo, we are allowed by the law to extract 2,550 liters of juice. And we are obliged, from which we can make champagne, and we're obliged to extract between 2 to 5% above that quantity, which has to be distillated. Why? To be sure that people would resist the temptation of overpressing in case of a small crop. Obviously, the quality of the juice is not the same from the beginning to the end. It is separated in two juices. First, the cuvée, which is the best part, 2,050 liters, followed by the taille, 500 liters. So, two things. First, why do we separate at 2,050 and 2,000? This is something which remains from history. Originally, it was 10 champagne barrique. The barrique is 205 liters. Then the taille. The taille obviously is less good juice because you begin to press the skin on the stem, and this is the reason why in Jacquesson we never use the taille when our taille are soft. And it's interesting at that stage to talk about the fact that some people don't use the taille but don't use it that way. In fact, you have three ways of not using your taille. I would say two are fair, three are legal, two are fair. So you can either do what we do, we sell, that's it. Second possibility, we exchange. For instance, I sell you 500 hectoliters of taille, you sell me in exchange 250 hectoliters of cuvée, you have lowered your cost price, I have not lost all the volume, that's fine. Except that will bring here some juices from outside, something that we don't want, but I mean, it's not a problem. Now there is a more vicious way, but which is legal, too complicated to explain why. which is roughly, instead of putting 4,000 kilo in your press, you put 5,000 kilo, which means that your 2,500 liters are cuvée. But it means that your wine has overproduced, because the paradox is that you talk about yield in kilo, but you control in hectoliter. And that's the reason why some people say that big yields are good for quality, because it allows them to eliminate the time, which is for me completely crazy. It means simply that they begin to think about quality, as I said, as long as they obtain the maximum in terms of quantity. And in fact, that explains our figures. Today in Champagne, we have about 33,000 hectares planted. This can give us, when the appellation that is maximum, slightly above 360 million bottles, so that around 11,000 bottles per hectare. At Jacquesson, we need about 40 hectares for 300,000 bottles. That's 7,500 bottles per hectare, because we have less fruits in the vineyard and less juice at that stage. That's very easy. In fact, we go a bit further in the pressing process than what I just described. For instance, we don't use the free-run juice, the first 30 or 40 liters, because even if you could think that it is the best juice because it has been obtained very smoothly, in fact, this first juice will also wash the grapes. We have more dust, more sediment, more chemical residuals. So we add the first 30, 40 liters of dye. And then we don't separate anymore the cuvée and dye precisely at 20.5 hectoliters. We separate them at the third forking over, because we consider that it is at the third forking over that you really begin to spoil the stem and the skin, and that you really begin to give a dye character to your juice. And in fact, it is surprising to see that the average of an harvest, it is very close to the 2,050 liters, but it can be 19, it can be 21. So our ancestors were quite smart. It worked quite well. In fact, to really understand why we consider that operation as crucial is simply because we don't use the skin here in the winemaking process. So it is here that we separate what you use from we don't use. If it's not done properly, it means that we'll have to sort of repair damages downstairs. And if we begin to repair damages, it means that we are beginning to lose some of the aromatic potential. So do that properly, and that's it. So we think that we do it. We know how we do it, so that's fine, and we prefer to do it ourselves.
Cuvée, you just take that and drop the cuvée downstairs. And then if you wanted to go to tile, there. So it's, it's actually, and that's for washing.
Yeah.
And for washing and for small harvest. So we do that in two different ways. First, some dry ice, and two, we still need a little bit of sulfite to avoid an immediate beginning of fermentation, so we have time for wine settling. But it is at that stage that we have to talk about what will remain a sort of eternal debate, technical debate in Champagne, which is about the malolactic. In Champagne, some people do the malo, some people block the malo, some people don't care about the malo. Well, in fact, if you don't care, it means that most of the time you do it. And obviously, when you vinify in old oak and you have already gone through some malolactic, you have malolactic bacteria. So the choice is I do it or I block it. People who block the malolactic fermentation do that for keeping obviously more acidity, which gives the wine a different tasting balance, which is fine. I mean, it's a matter of choice. What I disagree is another reason which is sometimes given for keeping the malolactic blocked. It is said that the supplementary acidity will age the wine, will help the wine to age better. And this I don't believe so for two reasons. Why being geography, second one being history. Geography first. The 49th parallel. This is a long straight line which separates the United States from Canada. It's going through the village of Avis, which means that here we are in Canada. I mean, I think the lack of acidity is not our main concern. Yeah. And the second reason is history. It's when you look at the 20th century, the best vintages of the 20th century. If you put about 96, 88, and 28,
most of the top vintages of the century have been low acidity vintages. But what means low acidity vintage in Champagne? It means high acidity for almost anyone else. So I think malolactic blocked or not is a matter of taste, and that's it. Now, if you want to block the malolactic and to be sure that it will remain blocked, you have two things to do. You have to be sure it will not begin, and you have to be sure it will never happen. To be sure that it will not begin, you have two solutions. Either vinifying at low temperature, what most people say and what nobody does, simply because it's simply not practical to do it. So the only solution is to add significantly more sulfite. And the other thing you have to do is that you have to filter your wines quite severely before bottling to be sure that you have no malolactic bacteria. And for instance, any wine.
Yeah.
So and we are pragmatic, and in the past 3 years, four wines didn't go through malolactic before being bottled here. So in 2008, Dizzy, Corne-Botret, and Aille-Vauxelles-Terme. The malolactic began and then stopped. And we tried to re-inoculate for it to work, and it didn't. And in fact, the wines were showing absolutely beautifully, perfectly. So we decided to bottle the wine with malolactic partially done in Dizzy and almost not done in Aille. But of course, we didn't block it, so we don't know what will happen in the bottle. The only problem, if it happens in the bottle, is that it may create a very, very light sediment, which will make the riddling more difficult. But we take also in consideration the fact that those wines will not be released before 8 or 9 years of bottling age, so I think it's not a problem. And in fact, a similar thing happened in 2009 for the same wines. So it may happen that we have wines with malolactic, not blocked, but not done. But it will remain an exception, because generally we prefer the balance of wine which have gone through malolactic. And I have a little story about that. I went years ago. I went to a restaurant, and I knew the sommelier, and I wanted to have a glass of champagne to begin with, but he proposed to pour me a glass, and I taste blind. I said yes, of course. So I tasted the wine, and I found the wine extremely good, but I found also that the dosage was quite high. And so I told him, and the answer was yes, the dosage is high, and it has to be because they block the malolactic fermentation. So I said, I mean, if you need to compensate something, first don't do it. And I think for me the logic was wrong. If the wine is not well balanced, and you can avoid that. So, but now some vintages and some types of wine can go well, but you need to have a really big structure.